What's going on, guys? It's Nick coming at you with a brand new Metaphys deck profile for post Burst of Destiny. Metaphys is a deck that I've been trying to put together for a really long time, and after literally months of testing different versions of the deck and different builds, I think I've finally settled on something that I really enjoy, but that's also really consistent and just overall fun. I would consider Metaphys to be very anti-meta. For those of you that don't know what the archetype does or how it works, it's literally banish.deck. And what I mean by that is this deck wants to banish anything and everything as much as possible, including its own cards. Because Metaphys is one of the few archetypes in the game where when their cards are banished, they generate you advantage. And it's something that you can easily capitalize on by playing certain hand traps and really crazy floodgates. Things that make the opponent you're facing want to flip the table upside down. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this profile. But before we do, I want to have a bit of a celebration and announce that I have officially hit 100 subscribers on my channel. And to me, that's huge. I know to some people that might not seem very significant or relevant, but the fact that 100 people took the time to sit down, subscribe, and watch the content that I put out makes me want to strive even harder to bring you really cool deck profiles and really dope Yu-Gi-Oh content. So for those of you that have subscribed, thank you so much. I mean, I know my channel is still really small, but I'm trying to grow into something really awesome. And if you're watching this now and you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do me a favor and just go ahead and hit it. Also give the video a like and let me know how much you love Metaphys. So with that being said, let's jump right into this profile, guys, so you can check out the spice that I've decided to bring to you today. So obviously we're playing Metaphys, so you're gonna have to play triple copies of their starter, and that is Metaphys Ragnarok. Now, something I'll just note here is all the Metaphys monsters, they're light attribute and worm type. And that's the same across the board for every single Metaphys. Ragnarok has two effects. Also, I should point out that he is a tuner monster. It's something that people tend to overlook. But Ragnarok has two effects. The first effect is when this card is normal or special summoned, you get to banish the top 3 cards of your deck. And if you do, this card gains 300 attack for each Metaphys card banished this way. And that attack buff is permanent. Secondary effect is, if this card inflicts battle damage to the opponent, you can special summon a level 5 or higher Metaphys monster directly from your deck. Now, Ragnarok is one of the 2 low-level Metaphys monsters in the theme. All the other Metaphys monsters are very high-level and makes them a bit bricky. But Ragnarok and the other low-level Metaphys are the only 2 that have hard once per turn clauses on their effects, because the higher level ones don't have once per turn clauses anywhere, which is really cool. But so Ragnarok is not only your starter, but it's also kind of your extender in a way. If he just jumpstarts all of your plays, and the fact you want things banished as much as possible, and Ragnarok's here to facilitate that. So overall, really great card. Definitely got to play 3 of it. Moving on to the other low-level Metaphys is 2 copies of Decoy Dragon. Now, Decoy Dragon is actually a pendulum, as you can see, but the cool thing is that his pend effect and his monster effect are completely the same. There literally is no difference. That effect reads as follows. When my monster is targeted for an attack, and that's any monster, it could be even him, I can target one of my Metaphys monsters that is banished or in my graveyard. I banish the Decoy Dragon, and then if I do, I special summon the Metaphys that I targeted. So this card is just really great to help get back some of your resources mid to late game, and also surprise your opponent with some really cheeky effects that can trigger. Because I will say that the high-level Metaphys monsters, they have an effect when they're banished, and then each one has an effect that triggers when they're summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster. So that's how the high-level ones work. But right now, these are your 2 low levels. You have Ragnarok and then Decoy. But now let's jump into the high-level ones, and you'll see real quick that they're kind of powerful. So the first one here on the list is 2 copies of Metaphys Daedalus. If this card is special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, you can banish all other special summon monsters on the field. That is not once per turn, that doesn't target, and that doesn't even destroy. This is a total blowout against almost anything you'll come across. This outs Dragoon, this outs so many cards. And then the secondary effect is If this card is banished, on the standby phase of the next turn, you shuffle this banished card back into your deck, that is cost, and then you can banish another Metaphys card except a copy of himself. So this card's really, really nice. I was testing with 3 of it, but again, I'm trying to minimize the number of high-level Metaphys monsters just to help avoid bricking and overall improve the consistency of the deck itself. But 2 copies of Daedalus I think is perfect. Then next we're on to 2 copies of Metaphys Nephthys. Nephthys is nice. If this card is special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, you can banish all set spells and traps on the field. That, again, does not target, doesn't destroy, and it's not even once per turn. And then the secondary effect is, during the standby phase of the next turn, after this card is banished, you can shuffle this banished card into the deck as cost, and then add a Metaphys card from the deck to your hand. So this is literally your searcher of the deck. And again, playing 2 of it I think is perfect, because at 2, you banish it enough times where you trigger the effect, but then you're not constantly drawing into it and screwing up your plays. So I think 2 is the perfect number. Then we are on 2 copies of Metaphys Tyrant Dragon. This is the highest attack Metaphys that you play. 2900, it's really, really beefy. If this card is special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, it's unaffected by trap effects, and if it attacks a monster, it can make a second attack in a row. So this is like your big beater of the deck. Really, really cool. And then if this card is banished, on the next standby, you shuffle it back, and you get to special summon a Metaphys monster from your hand. So that's it for the high-level Metaphys cards. Again, I'm playing 2 ofs of all of them for the reason I just explained. You don't want to see them constantly in your hand. You want to banish them, and playing 2 of each, I think, is a nice medium where you banish them enough, but they're not clogging your hand necessarily. But moving on to our next, I would say out-of-archetype starter, is 3 copies of Aloof Lupine. This card is nice. If it's normal summoned, you can banish a monster from your hand. That is cost, by the way. So even if the Aloof gets negated, you still banish the card out of your hand. And then you get to banish a monster from your deck with the same type as that monster. So if you banish like a Nephthys, for example, you get to banish from your hand. You get to banish a Tyrant Dragon or a Daedalus, since they're both worm types. Which is really cool. And then if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you get to add a banished monster back to your hand. So 3 copies of Aloof works really, really well as a secondary starter for the deck. Then we are on triple copies of Necroface. Necroface is absolutely disgusting. If this card gets banished, you banish, or both players banish the top 5 cards of their deck, or their entire deck if their deck has less than 5 cards. Necroface is not once per turn. So there's been games where I go Necroface into a Necroface into a Necroface, and both of us end up banishing 15 cards from our deck, and the opponent literally just extends the handshake and gets up and walks away in frustration. It's disgusting. Necroface is hilarious, and the fact that it's at 3 is dope, because this deck can really capitalize on it, and there's very few decks that can do that. Also, if it's mid to late game, you can normal summon the Necroface, and what Necroface does when it's normal summoned is it just kind of resets the entire game. It shuffles all banished cards back into their respective decks. And then Necroface gains 100 attack for each banished card shuffled into the main deck by that effect. So Necroface can be a really cheeky normal summon mid to late game, where it ends up becoming really, really big because it gains a bunch of attack, and then you kind of just reset both players' banish zones back into their deck, which is cool. So 3 copies of Necroface is nice. And then moving into what I would say is our extenders, we're on the Nemesis package. So we're playing 2 copies of Flag, 2 copies of Corridor. Hopefully I can fit all this here. And then the 1 Keystone. Now, this I think is the perfect ratio. And how the Nemesis monsters work is they all share a very similar effect to special themselves. And what that effect is each one of these can target a banished monster. You then special summon the Nemesis from your hand, and then you shuffle that banished monster you targeted back into the main deck, or the extra deck. That's really, really nice. Just being able to special summon these guys by shuffling back banished stuff is free real estate. And all these cards have really cool on-field effects. Nemeses Flag, during the main phase, you can add a Nemesis monster from deck to hand. Corridor can add a Nemesis monster that's banished to your hand. And then Keystone doesn't actually do anything on field, aside from him being a free special. But if he's banished, during the end phase of the turn he can be added from the banish zone back to your hand, which is nice. So I think the Nemesis package really helps boost the consistency of Metaphys overall, and allows you to just put additional bodies on field and help you play through certain disruptions, which I think is great. Obviously none of these cards got reprinted in the Megatin, so some of them are spiking in price, like their boss monster, Archnemeses Protos. This card is really great. Just a big beat stick, 2500 attack, 3000 defense, cannot be destroyed by card effects, cannot be normal summoned or set, must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 3 monsters with different attributes from your graveyard and or face up from your field. So something to note is that your Metaphys are light. You're playing some darks in Aloof and like Necroface, and then each Nemesis is different attribute. Keystone's Earth, Corridor's Wind, and Flag is Fire. So it's not difficult to get different attributes, or 3 different ones, in combination of graveyard and field, to be able to banish them for Protos' summon. And then mind you, like, when Protos banishes those cards as cost, it does trigger all their banish effects. So if you banish the Metaphys, it'll trigger the banish effect it has in the following standby. Necroface will trigger. And speaking of that, something I forgot to mention is that your Metaphys cards, Metaphys monsters, when they're banished, their effects trigger on the next standby phase. Keep in mind, it's the next standby phase. So whoever next standby phase it is, that's the standby phase it triggers. It doesn't wait until your next standby specifically. So it is a little slow, but not as slow as some people think. Because the deck does generate lots of advantage if things are going right. But either way, Protos is just a house. He can't be destroyed by card effects, including his own. And what his effect is you declare an attribute that's on the field. So if he's the only card on board, then the only attribute you could declare is Dark, since that's what he is. But you declare an attribute that's on the field. You destroy all monsters on the field of the declared attribute. And if then you prevent the opponent from special summoning monsters with that same attribute that was destroyed. Really insane effect. If you declare Dark, since he's a Dark, his effect activates. He doesn't pop himself, but since the effect was triggered, you still prevent the opponent from summoning out Darks, even though Protos wasn't destroyed, which is crazy. And again, like, you declare any attribute. So let's say you're playing against, like, Blue Eyes or something, or Harpy. You declare Wind, and then you just blow up all Wind monsters on the field. And then until the end of the next turn, neither player can special summon that attribute. So it's like a really crazy, like, floodgate, just blowout card overall. Really cool, and it is spiking in price from what I understand. So if you're looking to pick it up, definitely pick them up sooner rather than later. And then moving into some just like spicy one-of tech choices we play, we're on the 1 copy of Virtual World Nyan. We don't use this card for the on-field effect. We use this card for the banish effect, where if it's banished, you can target a banished card and shuffle it back. So this helps you recycle some resources. Really cool as a one-of. And then we're on the 1 copy of Shiranui Squire. Again, we don't play this card for the on-field effect. We play this card because of its banish effect, where when it's banished, you get to draw a card and then discard a card. So this helps you dig a little bit deeper into your deck, kind of fix your hand potentially, and then also potentially discard a brick or something that's just not useful to you. Keep in mind though, Squire is a zombie, so in tandem with Aloof Lupine, if you have Aloof and Squire, you can normal summon the Aloof, banish the Squire from hand, trigger the banish effect, and then assuming Aloof Lupine resolves, you get to banish a Necroface from your deck, because both Shiranui Squire and Necroface are both zombie type. So that's another cool interaction that I don't think people realize could be done, but still really fun nonetheless. Then moving into the last monster we play, it's actually just a hand trap. We're on triple copies of Dimensional Shifter. D-Shifter is probably single-handedly the most pushed hand trap in the game right now. There's so many decks that just fall to this card, and it's such a high-impact blowout hand trap. This will literally end people's turns. This is better than Droll, better than Ash, better than almost anything I could think of hand trap-wise. This card is nuts. And of course, because we want as many things as possible banished, it doesn't hurt us to play this. So triple copies of D-Shifter is all we need. For those of you wondering why we're not playing more hand traps, it's for the simple fact that this deck wants to banish as many cards as possible. So because of that, 90% of the time, you want the cards that you're banishing to do something. And hand traps don't do anything when they're banished. If anything, they're really bricky, because if you activate like a Necroface or summon a Ragnarok and you whiff, and banish like you know, Ash Blossoms and other shit that doesn't do anything, you really go neg, because like you're like dead in the water. Like, in order for this deck to function, you need to banish cards that generate you advantage. And if you're playing too many hand traps in this deck, it really screws up the consistency and makes you have really awkward hands. And then you end up whiffing and missing a lot on your banishing effects with like Ragnarok and Necroface specifically. So that's why we're not playing very many hand traps, but I think we're playing the best hand trap we could play, which is D-Shifter. So, but moving into the spells, we are on 3 copies of Asmyetaphys, one of the most interesting spell cards I think I've read for an archetype. It's once per turn, but it's a soft once per turn, so it's once per turn per copy. And what it does is you can banish a Metaphys card. It's continuous, by the way. You can banish a Metaphys card from your hand. That is not cost, that's effect. But assuming it resolves, you banish a Metaphys card from your hand, and if you do, you draw a card. So this helps you like unbrick. If you clog on some of the higher level ones, you can just banish them from hand to draw a card. Really, really nice. And then it has 2 other effects. And what those are is if a Metaphys card in my possession is banished, I can apply certain effects depending on whose turn it is. If it's my turn, all monsters in the field lose 500 attack and defense except Metaphys monsters. That debuff is permanent, and it also stacks. And then if it's the opponent's turn, you change the battle positions of all monsters in the field. The secondary one doesn't really come up as much because, like, you know, if decks are playing Links can't change position anyway, and the battle position change isn't the most relevant because it just changes them to defense. It's not like it's flipping them face down or anything. I think the better one of the effect is if it's my turn, the debuff is invaluable because that debuff is permanent, and that allows cards like Ragnarok to be able to hit over things that normally wouldn't be able to clear, and also be able to inflict damage to the opponent to trigger the secondary effect. So I think 3 copies of Asmyetaphys is great. Again, it not being hard per turn is really nice, and the only thing that would make it better is if it had an effect when it was banished, but unfortunately it doesn't. And then for the next spell we play is actually a very interesting tech choice. I'm on triple copies of Crossout Designator. You're probably wondering why I'm playing this card, and it's mainly used as a 2nd, 3rd, and 4th copy of Gold Sarcophagus. Because what you do is you declare a card name, and then you banish one of that declared name from your main deck. Now, granted, its effects are negated, as well as the activated effects and effects on field of cards with the same name, but only until the end of this turn. You have to understand that if you banish a Metaphys with this, their effects don't activate until the following standby after the turn they were banished. So the restriction Crossout puts on these cards is no longer applied at that point. And they still remember that they were banished last turn, so their standby phase effects do trigger when you cross out your Metaphys cards. So I think this really adds a really nice layer of consistency to the deck, and I think it's something that people should really look into playing if you're going to be playing Metaphys more seriously. It's a great card, and I think most people see this and they think, oh, he's using it to play 3 hand traps. We're actually using this to banish cards out of our deck to trigger effects to generate us advantage for later. So I think it's a really cool way to utilize this card, especially in this deck. And then, of course, moving on, we're on the 1 Gold Sarc. Unfortunately, it is limited, but this card is great. Think of this like a Rhoda, or it's literally any card you want. Just being able to banish anything, like banish a Necroface and then jumpstart your whole engine. Gold Sarc is nice. Then we got the 1 copy of Dimensional Fissure, again, because we want as many of our cards banished as possible, and we want to stop our opponent from playing as much as possible as well. So D-Fissure covers both of those aspects pretty well. Then moving into the traps, we're on 3 copies of Metaphys Ascension. Metaphys Ascension is an amazing trap card. On field, its on-field effect, you discard a Metaphys card to draw a card, then you can banish a Metaphys monster from your deck. So when you flip this card face up, it's you discard 1, draw 1, and then banish 1. All in that order. Really, really great. And then the secondary effect of this card is really wild, where if this card is banished, you get to add a Metaphys card from the deck to your hand. That triggers immediately when it's banished, which is dope. Like, this helps the deck's consistency so much, it's not even funny. So definitely play 3 copies of that. Also, something to note is if you have Asmyetaphys, the continuous spell, this is a Metaphys card, so you can banish this off of the spell to draw 1, and then because Ascension was banished, you search 1. So it's almost like activating Sky Striker Engage, which I think is pretty funny. But still, really, really cool interaction there. And then moving on to our next trap we play is 2 copies of Swordsoul Blackout. This is a brand new card out of Burst of Destiny that I think pairs really, really well with this deck. On field, it's almost like a, not Raigeki Break, what is that Winged Beast card where you tribute a Winged Beast and pop 2? Icarus Attack. Yeah, Icarus Attack. This card is just like that, except it's for worms. You target a worm monster you control, and then 2 cards your opponent controls and destroy them. Now granted, this doesn't say up to 2 cards, so you have to make sure that the opponent has 2 cards in their field, otherwise you can't activate this. But this is just awesome. You can go after front row, back row, doesn't even matter. You just pop a worm and then pop 2 of their cards. It's dope. And then when this card is banished, it actually special summons a level 4 token tuner to your deck. Or to your field, excuse me. So when this card gets banished, it gives you access to synchro plays, which is really, really insane. So 2 great effects. And then we are on the 1 copy of Metaphys Dimension. Just 1 copy of this. The reason for that is because I've seen some builds like max out or play 2. I don't think that's the correct ratio for 2 reasons. This card doesn't help you. It's not like a starter in any way, shape, or form. And it doesn't extend either. And it also doesn't have an effect when it's banished. So this is a card you want to search mid to late game. And at that point it helps you out, but if you draw this early game, it doesn't really do much for you. What it does is if your opponent special summons a monster, you get to special summon a banished Metaphys. Mind you, this does not trigger their effects when they're summoned because it wasn't special by the effect of a Metaphys monster, which is unfortunate. And then the secondary effect is if a Metaphys card is banished, I can target a card on the field and banish it. So that effect is cool, but again, this isn't really a card you want to max out on because it can be a little situational at times. And then for the last card, or I'm sorry, second to last card, we're on 1 Macrocosmos. Again, we want to banish as much as possible, and we want to stop our opponent from playing. This card succeeds in doing both. And now for the last card in the main deck. Main deck is at 44 cards. We're on the 1 Imperial Order. Just because, again, we don't want our opponent to have any fun. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's jump into the extra deck real quick. We're on the 1 copy of Metaphys Horus. This card is nuts. Just a generic level 6 synchro. And then it has effects based on the non-tuner material that you use to summon it. So if it was a normal monster, this card is unaffected by card effects this turn. If it was an effect monster, you get to target one other face-up card in the field, negate that target's effects. That negation is permanent. Or if it was a pendulum monster, your opponent chooses 1 monster they control, and then it gives control of it to you, but it cannot attack this turn. So it literally forces your opponent to give me one of their monsters, and that's a permanent steal. They don't get it back. So I think Metaphys Horus is nice. Then we're on the 1 Coral Dragon, just as another generic level 6 synchro, but it's also a tuner, so it helps you synchro climb into some bigger synchro monsters. Then we're on 1 copy of Yazi, Evil the Yang Zing. Just really good worm support overall, and being able to pop cards and special worm from your deck is awesome. Then we're on the 1 Draco Berserker, the Tenyi. Again, whenever the opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you just banish it. We want to banish as much as possible, and this card is really annoying to deal with. Then we're on the 1 copy of Virtual World Shen. Again, banish as much as possible. 1 copy of Ruddy Rose Dragon. Banish the graveyard, which is also really annoying. And then we are on the 1 copy of Geomathmech Final Sigma. This card is nuts. We go into this by using a Metaphys Ragnarok, and then any one of our level 8 Metaphys monsters, because 4 and 8 makes 12. And when this card is summoned to the extra monster zone, it is unaffected by all card effects except Mathmech cards. So it's literally a 3k beat stick that's just unaffected by everything. Really awesome. Then we're on 1 copy of the Trishula Fusion. Now, you're probably scratching your head at this. This is, I think, a really cool tech choice in the extra. We are unable to utilize the effects that the card has because we're not banishing dragons to summon this. But what we use this card for is almost like a pseudo chaos monster. Its summoning condition says it can either be fusion summoned or special summoned from the extra deck by banishing 3 monsters with different names that you control. That's awesome because, again, you want your cards banished. If you have like a Necroface on field and like one of your higher level Metaphyses that have already triggered the effect, the high level Metaphys cards don't do anything after they've been summoned. They're just kind of like beat sticks on the field. So you can just banish those cards to summon like this out of your extra and then trigger like their banished effects. And it puts a 2700 body on board. So think of it like a reverse chaos monster where instead of banishing cards from your graveyard, you're just banishing cards from the field to special this out of your extra, which is really, really cool. I think is a tech choice. And then moving into some exceeds, we're playing 1 copy of Light Dragon at Ignister, just to overlay for a generic 4, being able to like protect our stuff from card effects and popping cards. 1 copy of Tornado Dragon to deal with back row. It is cool because it's actually a worm attribute. Then we're on the 1 copy of Dhampir Vampire Sheridan. This card is crazy. You're probably wondering how the hell we make this, and that's actually through Metaphys Horus. Horus, when it's synchro summoned, allows us to steal a monster the opponent controls. What Vampire Sheridan says, if you use a monster to make this that has the level, you can treat that level as being 6. So with Horus and the card you stole from the opponent, you can overlay into the Sheridan, and then you have Sheridan can detach a material to target a card and send it to grave, which is really, really cool. So that's another spicy tech choice we play in the extra deck. And then that's it for the Xyzes. Moving on to the links, we're on the 1 Nightmare Phoenix, again to deal with back row, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Topologic Drisbana, and then the 1 copy of Topologic Zerovoros. Really insane Link 4 boss, especially for a deck like this. This card is nuts. Gains 200 attack for each banished card, and that's both players' banished cards, by the way. And then if a monster is special summoned to a zone he's pointing to, he banishes the entire field, including himself. And then on the next standby phase, he returns to board to do it all over again. It's just an awesome, awesome boss. So that's it, guys, for the extra deck. We'll dive into the side deck very quickly. We're just on triple copies of Alpha, the Master of Beasts. This is just to help us going second to deal with like any form of like monster negates. That way our normal summons can go through. Also, if you have a Ragnarok in this, you can synchro both of those into the Geomathmech Final Sigma, which is pretty cool. Then we are on the 1 copy of Shiranui Spirit Master in the side. This is like if we know we're gonna go second, I usually side out the Squire in place of the Spirit Master because I think Spirit Master is a little better for going second. If he's banished, you get to pop a card on the field, which is nice. Then we're on the 1 copy of Artifact Lancia. This is actually played in the side deck as a Crossout Designator target. So after game 1, once the opponent realizes that we're like here to banish everything that we can, you gotta imagine that Lancias are probably gonna get sided in, that the opponent's gonna side them into his deck. So since we're main decking triple Crossout, we can side in our 1 copy of Lancia, and if they Lancia us, we can just Crossout Designator the Lancia, which I think is great. Then we're on 3 copies of Soul Absorption because winning in time is absolutely hilarious, and we banish so much that this card gives us an insane amount of life points. Really, really great to side into for game 3. Then we're on triple copies of Evenly Matched. Again, this just helps us going second, just breaking boards apart so we can play our game. And then we're also on triple Anti-Spell Fragrance, again, because we don't want to get shut down. We want to shut the opponent down, excuse me. We don't want them to be using like blowout cards or having any fun whatsoever. Also, Anti-Spell plus Metaphys Nephthys is disgusting because they have to set all their spells and traps, and then you summon out a Metaphys Nephthys, and then Nephthys just banishes all set spells and traps on the field, a complete blowout. And then for the last card we play on the side is just a 1 Infinite Impermanence, and again, this is just played as a Crossout target. Not every deck is main decking imperms, but for those that are, we can side this in game 2 or 3. And now, since you're main decking the Crossout, if they imperm like our normal summoner or one of our effects, we can just cross out the imperm and our effect goes through without issues. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that profile. Let me know what you guys thought about some of the tech choices and overall, just what you think. Thanks again so much for helping me reach 100 subs. I love you guys. You all are the best. Stay tuned for more content coming to you very soon. We now have Synchro Storm and Burst of Destiny out officially in the TCG, so I'm definitely able to have some new cards to play with now and can definitely bring you guys some really dope profiles. But thank you again. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and have a great weekend, and also happy Halloween.